Well, good morning. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. We are just 68 days out until the federal Real ID enforcement period takes effect. You might remember I stood here just a week ago alerting Illinoisans that not everyone will need a Real ID when the federal enforcement date takes effect in just over 2 months. I took the opportunity to clarify who needs a Real ID because there continues to be a lot of confusion and a ton of misinformation about what's going to happen on May 7th. Most of it is centered around the fact that most people don't need a Real ID. And if you do need one, you most likely don't need one by May 7th. You'll notice that I've specifically stopped referring to the May 7th deadline as a deadline because it is not a deadline. After May 7th, you will still be able to get a Real ID. You will be able to get a Real ID forever. Nevertheless, our facilities continue to experience unprecedented demand for Real ID appointments as the May 7th enforcement date quickly approaches. For instance, just this past Monday, we had a record 58,000 visitors to our website who were looking to make Real ID appointments in one day. To give you some context, we had a record 530,000 people seeking Real ID appointments in January, which was an all-time record. And as of this past Monday, we had 860,000 people trying to make appointment in just the first 24 days of this month. And this surge is not confined to Illinois. DMVs across the country have experienced unprecedented lines and wait times. In Miami, people are sleeping overnight outside of DMV facilities and in their cars just to improve their chances of getting a Real ID. So today our focus is twofold. First and foremost, we want Illinoisans to make sure that they truly need a Real ID before coming to a facility. To help, we have created an interactive Real ID portal that guides you through a series of prompts to determine if you really need one before the federal enforcement date. For instance, it will ask you if you have a U.S. passport, global entry card, or military ID. If you respond yes for any of them, it informs you that you do not need a Real ID. And even if you don't have one of those and you are not flying on a commercial airline on May 7th or early summer, you also do not need a Real ID. If you've gone through the portal and determined that you need a Real ID, it will present you with the DMV walk-in options and let you know how you can schedule an appointment at a facility near you. Our second point of emphasis is that if you really need a Real ID, we are introducing Real ID Saturdays at 12 of our busiest Chicago and suburban DMV facilities to meet this unprecedented demand. From 7:30 in the morning to 5 p.m. every Saturday beginning this weekend and lasting until May 10th, a dozen DMV locations will open exclusively to serve Real ID only applicants. And they will operate a little differently than most of our Chicago Metro facilities because they will not take appointments. Again, those 12 facilities will only offer Real ID services. No road exams or other DMV services will be available at these locations. These locations include our facilities in Addison, Aurora, Chicago West, Des Plaines, Elgin, Joliet, Lake Zurich, Melrose Park, Plano, St. Charles, Waukegan, and Woodstock. We estimate that these 12 facilities alone will have the capacity to accommodate around 75,000 to 100,000 residents by just offering these Saturday hours. However, and this is an important point to make, because these are non-appointment facilities and because of the increased demand for Real IDs, customers will likely encounter lines and wait times. That's why, again, it's so important to make sure that you need a Real ID and visit the Real ID portal on our website to confirm that. In addition to these 12 walk-in facilities, we're also expanding hours at 6 appointment-only facilities in the city and suburbs that operate from 7:30 to 5 on Saturdays, where customers can get a Real ID. While the addition of Real ID Saturdays will inevitably help, the demand is showing no signs of slowing down. So let me clarify again. As of May 7th, if you have a current valid standard driver's license, you do not need a Real ID to legally drive a vehicle. You do not need a Real ID to show identification. You do not need a Real ID for proof of citizenship. And you can still get a Real ID after the May 7th enforcement date. So if you're planning a trip and you don't have to travel until later in the summer or fall, it's best to hold off to avoid any problems getting an appointment. As of May 7th, you will need a Real ID compliant driver's license or state ID if you are over the age of 18 and intend to fly a commercial airline or enter certain federal facilities. But let me be clear, you can still fly if you have a valid U.S. passport, global entry card, or military ID. But the fact is that not everyone needs a Real ID, and in some cases might not ever need one. We have recently added more than 2,500 daily appointments at facilities in Chicago and the suburbs, specifically for Real IDs. Those appointments fill up fast, but we do add new day of appointments at each facility every morning and new appointments for later in the week each afternoon. If you can't make it to your appointment, please respond to the text and cancel it. This will help free up additional appointments for others. As I mentioned last week, we are seeing a drastic uptick in last-minute cancellations. Please be thoughtful if you know that you will not be showing up to your appointment. Again, before scheduling an appointment, please make sure that you'll need a Real ID before May 7th. If you don't, hold off because you're likely to save yourself headaches. We're advising everyone to assess their own situation and near future needs before making that determination, because let's be honest, who wants to waste their time in line waiting for something that they did not even need? Thank you so much. Any questions? Well, I appreciate everyone being here, and have a beautiful sunny Thursday. Thanks.